Good morning. Start your day informed and ahead. Today is Thursday, the 2nd of July. I'm Angela Lagunsad Castro.
And I'm Cheska Litoncala. We are bringing you the perfect mix of the headlines you need and the conversations that shape your day.
From the news desk to the digital space, we have got you covered. I'm Pauline Verzosa, and welcome to Morning Matters.
And first on the news, the Iglesia Ni Cristo officially concluded its program along EDSA on Wednesday night. This came after the Quezon City government recalled the extension of its permit for the gathering. Despite the end of the program, INC members said they will not continue their protest in Manila on today. Authorities are preparing additional security personnel, particularly at Liwasang Bonifacio ng Maynila, which is designated as a freedom park and does not require a permit for public gatherings. Earlier in the evening, Senator Rodante Marcoleta arrived at the site and addressed his supporters. In his speech, Marcoleta thanked those who stood by him and said he is willing to go to jail if that is what it takes to fight for justice. Meanwhile, Congressman Leandro Leviste returned for the second day of the protest. He said around 500 individuals from his district in Batangas who are not members of INC also joined the gathering to show their support.
Yung cancellation po ng permit na issue ng city government ng Quezon City ay of course wala pa pong naipapaabot sa amin na dahilan. As far as I am concerned, wala po ka pong natanggap na reklamo about it. Ang karaniwan na reklamo lang of course yung slowdown ng traffic and everything, yung kalat, pero normal naman yan. Pero yung reklamo na specific about the what is happening din, wala po man. I have already requested additional personnel coming from other units. We will deploy an initial maybe 1,000. Depending po sa outcome po ng number po ng mag-rally doon.
Napaka-hypocritical na inuuna ang kaso kay Senator Marcoleta na hindi naman allegedly galing sa pondo ng gobyerno, sapagkat ang masasabi ko, napakaraming mga kongresista at senador ay tumatanggap ng pera galing sa mga DPWH contractors at napakaraming mga kampanya ay pinondohan ng flood control.
All right, so as we said before, freedom of expression is enshrined in the Constitution along with the right of the people to, peacefully assemble and, air their grievances in the government. Pero yun nga, ang naging issue lang dito din kasi nung Tuesday, it was a surprise gathering and a lot of people were inconvenienced by this gathering, no? Ang daming hindi nakapasok ng school, ang daming hindi nakapasok ng trabaho. Even here, we had to stand, di ba? Kasi we had to wait for the other anchors to arrive because na-stuck sila sa traffic. So, yun yung nirereklamo naman ng iba. So, they will continue this assembly sa Liwasang Bonifacio ng Manila. But of course, sabi nga nila, the plunder indictment isn't going to be resolved along EDSA but in court. So despite the rally, ang sabi ni Ombudsman Boying Rimulya, he will push through with filing of charges against Senator Rodante Marcoleta. And that is going to be anytime soon. So we'll see what's going to happen.
And I think the crowd was less yesterday compared to the crowd on Tuesday. I think estimated numbers nung Tuesday were 14,000.
Yesterday.
Then yesterday estimated that was 4,000.
So nabawasan
Nabawasan yata siya. But people actually slept in the buses, they slept in tents, they slept in makeshift sleeping areas nga. And one of the reasons daw na na-revoke yung permit was because the rallyists broke this is from the QCDPOS. The rallyists daw broke the agreement to stay in White Plains and not occupy EDSA.
Well, that's very clear from the videos we're also showing, that they spilled over already along EDSA. That's why only 3 lanes were passable northbound. So if their permit only granted them in White Plains Avenue, then this is clearly a violation and that's why it was revoked. But as Angela mentioned, they will be moving their rally today to Liwasang Bonifacio. They don't need a permit for that, diba? Kasi it's a Freedom Park yan eh.
Yes.
So they can just go there and conduct a demonstration, a protest. But going back also to what Senator Marcoleta said, he appeared in the rally yesterday for the first time. He didn't show up on Tuesday, but yesterday he was speaking to INC members saying that he's being singled out by the Ombudsman. He calls this politically motivated and that he is being attacked. But Ombudsman Boying Rimulya already answered saying this is not selective justice. They have the evidence. It clearly falls under plunder because the elements are there. Ano ba yung elements? You have to be a government official and that you received gifts or money more than 50 million pesos, diba? So, kahit hindi pa siya senator or he was just a congressman, that itself is already a violation of the anti-plunder law because it exceeds 50 million pesos. It was the purpose of the gift wasn't clear din, diba? So, sabi nga ni Assistant Ombudsman Miko Clavano, it's hard to just consider that as a gift, 75 million pesos. Tapos hindi mo pa dineclare sa salin mo.
Kaya nga, so sinasabi nila tuloy yung kaso na yan, along with the campaign donors themselves, and one of which is former Congressman Mike Defensor. At that time that the donation was made, he was the CEO and founder of Pax Libira, a mining company which is under the Omnibus Election Code, Section 95, sabi nga ng COMELEC, is also a violation, because a company that destroys or exploits natural resources ay hindi dapat nagbibigay ng campaign donation. So, pero ang defense naman ni former Congressman Mike Defensor, in his defense,
in Defensor's defense.
Yes, tama ka dyan. Sabi niya, he already divested from that company. So, we'll see what's going to happen also. And by the way, yesterday, we passed along, di ba, that's where we go home, that area, sa may EDSA People Power Monument. So, I've seen some areas kasi nagkumpul-kumpul ng mga basura. So, I took a video of it. Kumpul-kumpul siya, to be fair. In this area, meron kumpul, pero marami. So, I was wondering if we could check the situation right now along that area in EDSA, Corinthian, and People Power Monument, kung nalinis na. Because I've got several messages from other people in my post saying na, antayin mo, lilinisin nila yan. Because, well, to be fair din naman, dun sa mga dating naging rally nila, nagliligpit sila. So, I was really surprised yesterday to see those, yung tambak ng mga basura.
Kasi prior, you saw it cleaned up naman. Okay.
So we'll see. Kaya sana makita natin.
All right, now meanwhile, Malacanang is firing back at Senator Amy Marcos after she called the Marcos administration insensitive, drunk with power, and bangag during the INC rally in EDSA. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro questioned why Marcos was silent when former President Rodrigo Duterte admitted to using marijuana while in office. Castro also accused the senator of spreading fake news and stoking anger against the government. The palace official then appealed to Iglesia Ni Cristo members to be careful not to be used by groups allegedly seeking to destabilize the administration.
Suklam ang gobyernong manhid at walang pakialam sa hirap ng ating mga magsasaka at mangingisda, mga sektor na nagpapakain sa atin na halos walang makain, gutom ang mga pamilya. Wala silang pakialam. Gobyernong tulog, lasing sa kapangyarihan, wala silang pakialam. Pagkat itong gobyerno ay bangag!
Hindi natin alam kung Senator Amy ay bulag, nagbubulag-bulagan, o talagang pinipikit lamang niya ang mata niya sa katotohanan para magamit siya sa paninira sa gobyernong ito.
So aside from calling the administration tulog at lasing sa kapangyarihan, Senator Amy Marcos also called the case of Senator Rodante Marcoleta as kabalbalan and kalokohan. But as we know, this is not the first time Senator Amy Marcos criticized the administration and her very own brother, the President, PBBM. Last year during an INC rally as well, diba, noong November, she accused the President of being a drug addict, of using drugs, along with his wife, even the presidential son, right, was mentioned. They were accused of being drug addicts. So it's very apparent that there are cracks within the Marcos family. They are now on different sides. But as Yuse Claire Castro mentioned, nakakaawa daw si Senator Amy Marcos because she is spreading fake news. Nakakaawa daw yung mga obstructionists na gumagamit ng fake news para makapanira. At mas nakakaawa din daw yung mga pumapalakpak because, they're listening to all these these allegations without basis. So, but at the end of the day, tama nga naman, we need to be more circumspect whenever we hear allegations like this. As the public, kailangan discerning din talaga kayo kung ano yung paniniwalaan nyo and not just believing stories.
Senator Amy Marcos also questioned why President Marcos is currently in Canada instead of focusing on the problems here daw in the country. But President Marcos left, I think, also on Tuesday or Wednesday?
Yesterday.
Yesterday, yeah. So, but he's also there to attract Canadian investors. They're focusing on, the goal is to secure partnerships in critical minerals, renewable energy, AI, cyber technology, IT, and possibly even a free trade agreement. So may nangyayari doon, may nangyayari dito. Lots of very spicy, spicy words.
Yeah. Well, pero di ba pinag-usapan na rin naman natin yan yesterday na if PBBM leaves the country,
Yes.
kung if he will push through with his appointments outside of the country, sasabihin ng tao na parang wala siyang pakialam. But if he will cancel it, sasabihin ng mga
When-
tao, you are so affected by
Yes.
what's happening right now. So,
Mga who
parang
blinks
parang
first.
ang message nito is business as usual, kumbaga, di ba? And of course, itong salitaan na to between Senator Amy Marcos and Yusek Claire Castro is not new anymore. And political observers would always say na this is part of a broader kumbaga perspective, especially on 2028. Itong exchanging nila will be part of narrative of who's who, etc. Kung sino yung pwedeng maging presidente by 2028. But of course, as well, on the point ni Senator Amy Marcos sa selective justice, yung part nila doon, of course, you will also think and ask the government, aside from these, kung tawag doon na, kakampi, 'di ba, ng or kaaway o the ones who are opposing the government, sino pa yung sinasampahan nyo ng kaso? But as of now, Senator Revilla ang nakakulong pa lang. But what about former Speaker Martin Romualdez? What about the other congressmen? So,
And
yun ang aabangan natin.
Si former DPWH Secretary Manuel Bunuan,
Yes.
mukhang
Gagawin
magiging
pang
state witness.
Oo.
Alright, talaga yung mga tinatanong din nila.
More on that in the coming days. The families of victims in the Tacloban school shooting are calling for a review of the minimum age of criminal liability, saying minors involved in heinous crimes should face greater accountability. The appeal was raised during a Senate hearing on the incident and online gaming platforms. The relatives also pushed for separate facilities for minors accused of serious crimes, saying they should face consequences for their actions. Meanwhile, the aunt of one of the suspects, Police Staff Sergeant Arla Rey Paciencia, testified that her 14-year-old nephew allegedly forcibly entered her house to get her firearm. She also admitted bringing him to a firing range once, saying he wanted to become a police officer. Senator Risa Ontiveros said the shooting showed possible influence from international online group 764, with details submitted to the NBI for investigation.
Nash unlawfully entered my own house. It's not a room po, it's my own house. He forcibly damaged my locker. It was locked, plastic locker, and my firearm was inside a gun box. I believe it was safe at that time since I'm only the one staying in my own house.
Ang modus ng grupong ito, maghanap ng mga vulnerableng minors online at hikayatin na gumawa ng kahindik-hindik na bagay. Sabi mismo ng FBI, the leaders of the group are pushing victims to create graphic pornography, to harm family pets, to cut themselves with sharp objects, or to even die by suicide. Paano? Kinakaibigan muna. Binibigyan ng sense of belonging. Pinaparamdam na may lugar sila. At saka, unti-unting hinihikayat sa mas madilim at mas mapanganib na gawain.
So apparently the extremist group 764 originated in Texas. And as Senator Risa mentioned, that they either groom or coerce the children they meet online. And allegedly, an independent investigation found a Facebook account interacted with one of the Tacloban suspects. And na-instruct pa yung minor to delete the social media accounts, delete yung Telegram, Discord, Reddit, to remove any traces of evidence. So the profiles have been deactivated since, but this is an ongoing investigation as to how far or how deep the group has been able to infiltrate the youth here in the Philippines. But also, we've heard for many calls to lower the criminal age of liability, but there are also senators, like Senator Raffy Tulfo is pushing for amendments in the Juvenile Justice and Welfare Act. Kasi nga daw, pag nasa bahay pag-asa lang, baka hindi daw maramdaman yung consequences of their actions. He also mentioned like the juvenile detention system in the US, but also there is pushback from the other side saying that juvenile detention centers, the harsh treatments, the harsh methods, and like boot camp style, they don't work. Because brutalization, parang may brutalization effect daw, and it's not a deterrence because the kids don't understand it.
That's why nga, di ba, yung sinasabi nila yung corporal punishment, bawal na dito sa atin ngayon. Pero lumaki tayo ng gano'n, di ba, yung pinapalo tayo, gano'n. Ngayon kasi there's a, ang batas natin, positive disciplining.
Gentle parenting.
Yeah, so
I guess this also just highlights the importance of regulation on the part of parents on what your children are consuming, doing online. Kasi pag binigyan nyo sila masyadong freedom, ay hindi nyo na alam kung saan po sila pupunta, anong mga websites, sino yung mga kausap nila, because there are communities like this, no? So we cannot ignore this. Kailangan ipag-usapan natin to, although we need to be sensitive also on how we discuss this, because we don't want violence to spread, diba? So it's good that there are conversations like this, and we are addressing already all these subcultures, 764, there are other communities as well, so hopefully this could be resolved soon.
parang yung campaign nila dyan, ano, yung true crime community, and it says daw no lives matter. Yun parang yung nakalagay dun sa 764 eh. So we'll see what's going to happen. And if, sinasabi nga nila, if banning a game is sufficient enough, because if you ban this game, let's say Gorebox, what makes you think na itong predator na to, yung mga perpetrators na to, would go to another platform to do whatever they are doing to the kids, diba? So, yun.
All right, still lots to discuss,
Ano,
but not
dami
enough
mo
time.
sabihin.
Don't go away. Morning Matters will be back after a short break.
Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. And now for the weather. Tropical Depression Henry is now outside the Philippine area of responsibility. Odasa says it was last spotted 610 kilometers west of Macnotan, La Union. Henry no longer has a direct effect on any part of the country. Rains, however, are still expected due to the southwest monsoon or habagat. And affected areas include Palawan, Occidental Mindoro, Zamboanga, Basilan, Tawi-Tawi, and Antique. The rest of the country may also expect rains due to the easterlies and localized thunderstorms. The Iglesia ni Cristo is set to continue its rally at Liwasang Bonifacio in Manila today. And now we go live to our mobile journalist Fatima Baduria for the latest update. Fatima, marami na bang tao ang nandyan?
Huling kumpara nung mga nakaraang araw, mas maraming ang tao ngayon dito sa Liwasang Bonifacio. Sama-sama na rito yung mga miyembro ng INC at yung mga residente ng Batangas na kasalukuyan ngang nagsasagawa ng kanilang kilos protesta. Ang crowd estimate ng mga kapulisan as of 8 a.m. ay 400. Pero patuloy silang nadagdagan at ngayon sabi nga ng mga kapulisan ay mukhang hindi lang 400 ito at tuloy-tuloy nga yung dating ng mga tao, no? Lalo na yung mga INC dahil karamihan o marami sa kanila ay dito na rin talaga natulog at nakaset up ulit yung kanilang mga tent. At dito nga lumipat yung mga nag-rally mula sa EDSA matapos ma-revoke yung kanilang permit para makapagdaos ng kilos protesta. Dito kasi sa Liwasang Bonifacio, hindi nila kailangan ng permit dahil recognized ito bilang Freedom Park. Ibig sabihin, malayang pwedeng magsagawa ng pagtitipon dito at maging mga kilos protesta. Kaya nga simula Martes ay hindi sila hinahanapan ng permit dito kahit pa nagtuloy-tuloy ang rally at kahit pa may mga nag-camp dito overnight, Pauline.
So Fatima, kamusta naman ang lagay ng trapiko dyan sa paligid ng Liwasang Bonifacio?
Huling sarado ang Magallanes Drive, no, dahil dito kasalukuyang itinatayo yung entablado ng mga nagrarally, pero bukas pa rin naman yung loton at sa ngayon ay tuloy-tuloy pa naman yung daloy ng trapiko. Meron din na mga otoridad, no, na nangangasiwa, no, pagdating sa trapiko, Pauline.
Okay, so nabanggit mo Fatima, may stage na itinatayo. So magkakaroon ba ng mga aktibidad ang INC sa araw na ito? Ano yung mga nakalatag sa kanilang programa? Nasabi ba nila yon?
Pauline, inaasahan nga natin, no, na magkakaroon ng programa dito. Pero sa ngayon ay itinatayo pa lang talaga yung stage at pati yung mga LED screens ay inaayos pa lang nila. Pero sa ngayon, tuloy-tuloy na yung kanilang kilos protesta. Nagsasagawa na sila ng demonstrasyon, no, sa may tapat ng loton. Dito na nila isinasagawa yung kanilang panawagan, no, yung kanilang sigaw na itigil na yung korupsyon at ikulong na lahat ng mga kurakot. Pero pagdating sa specific na programa ay wala pa silang nabibigay sa ngayon, Pauline.
And Fatima, meron na bang mga nakumpirmang personalidad na dadalo sa rally dyan ngayong araw sa Liwasang Bonifacio?
Pauline, kanina, no, dumalo raw si Batangas 1st District Representative Leandro Leviste. Nagpakita siya kaninang umaga, no. So pangatlong araw na ito na nagpakita siya, no, simula nung Martes, kahapon at ngayon. Pero bukod kay Leviste, hindi pa natin sigurado kung sino-sinong mga personalidad pa ang inaasahan nila dito para sa programa, Pauline.
Thank you very much for those updates. I was mobile journalist Fatima Baduria. EDSA and nearby areas are now all open to traffic following the rally of Iglesia ni Cristo. And for the latest on the ground, let's bring in our mobile journalist, Jazz Paredes. Jazz, kamusta na ang sitwasyon dyan?
Yes, Pauline, back to normal na nga ang operasyon ng mga lahat ng lanes ng kalsada ng EDSA pa northbound and southbound matapos niyang lumipat ng pagtitipon ng Iglesia ni Cristo sa Liwasang Bonifacio. Maaalala natin kahapon, Pauline, no, naglabas ng kopya ng permit ng QCPD bandang alas 6 ng gabi. Ngunit later within the night, 7 past 7, ay nirecall na ito ng DPOS at ang ayon nga sa kanila, this is due to the severe inconvenience and congestion na dulot ng pagtitipon. Kaya naman ito ay nirecall. At kagaya nga niyan, Pauline, nakita natin malinis na. So, Pauline, libot ko lang kayo sa kasalukuyang itsura nitong EDSA sa mga oras na ito. Pauline, makikita natin kahapon itong barriers na ito, nakalipat yan, 3 lanes. Pero ngayon, lahat ng lanes ay open na at mabilis na rin ang daloy ng trapiko. Habang dito naman sa white lanes, Pauline, no, kung matatandaan natin kahapon dito, nagtipon-tipon nga yung mga nakiisa sa protesta. Ngunit ito ay malaya na rin nadadaanan ng mga motorista. Wala na tayong road closures and makikita natin dito sa kabilang side, ayon going yung paglilinis ng QCDRRMO and MMDA, kaugnay nga yan ng mga naiwan na mga tents at mga portalets na naiwan pa. Pero sa ngayon, Pauline, no, ito na lamang daw yung kanilang kiniklear din na malinis na ulit itong area na kung saan niya idinaos yung pagtitipon kahapon. Pauline.
So Jazz, yung mga nagrally dyan, the past 2 days, sila ba ay kumpirmado na lilipat nga sa Liwasang Bonifacio the same rallyists?
Yes, Pauline, from the information that we got so far, base na rin yan sa konfirmasyon din ng Metro Manila PIO, ay doon na nga lilipat yung kanilang pagtitipon. Dahil inanunsyo rin yan kagabi dito, no, sa kanilang entablado na bago sila mag-wrap up, ay doon na nga daw sila lilipat dahil nga na-recall or hindi napayagan yung kanilang naunang permit. And sorry, Pauline, dagdag ko lamang, no, kanina nakausap natin yung isa sa QCDRRMO, bago daw umalis yung mga miyembro ng INC, ay nasabihan din daw sila na kailangan nilang tumulong paglilinis, which isa rin sa mga dahilan kung bakit malinis or mabilis na na-clear out itong bahagi na kanilang pinagsagawaan ng kanilang pagtitipon. Pero ngayon, Pauline, clear na at back to normal na talaga yung ating operation. Makikita nyo naman, Pauline, malinis at mabilis na rin yung daloy ng trapiko. Pauline.
Oo, Jazz, kasi nabanggit ni Fatima na doon sa Liwasang Bonifacio, kakaunti pa lamang yung mga rallyista na nandun. Parang nasa 400 pa lamang. So mukhang umuwi ba muna yung mga miyembro ng INC bago sila magtipon muli sa Liwasang Bonifacio?
Pauline, we can confirm kung umuwi ba sila or pansamantala naghanap muna ng sisilungan. Pero Pauline, pagkakaalala ko lang din sa ating mga nakaraang panayam, lalo na kaya Batangas First District Leandro Leviste, kahapon kanyang binila yung mga galing Liwasang Bonifacio papunta dito. 500 constituents daw yun, hindi membro ng INC. May dala daw silang mga tent. Doon daw sila balak mag-camping dito. Pero ngayon na lumipat na sila doon, it's possible na yung mga nanggaling doon na bumalik na rin, ay doon na nanatili siguro ito yung mga nakita nating volume ng tao doon na nagstay dahil nakaprepare sila. Meron sila mga tent, meron sila mga latag. Pero kahapon, Pauline, hindi natin sure kung saan ba nagtungo yung mga galing na nandito. Dahil mga nakabuses sila, may mga sasakyan sila. Well, we can't say for sure right now kung nakauwi ba muna. But I think we're expecting na mas dumami pa within later the day nga yung mga tao or mga number of participants sa Liwasang Bonifacio dahil it was formally announced nga na doon nalilipat yung kanilang pagtitipon. Pauline.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that report. That was mobile journalist Jazz Paredes. DILG Secretary John Vic Remulla defended the Philippine National Police's handling of the Iglesia ni Cristo-led rally along EDSA. In an interview with One News Historicon, Remulla said authorities saw no reason to use force since the gathering remained peaceful. He also revealed that the government only learned about the planned rally around 11 p.m. on Monday, leaving authorities with limited time to prepare before it took place the following day. The DILG chief maintained that the protest was properly managed and remained relatively peaceful.
You have to weigh the pros and the cons of doing these things. And dispersing people is not an easy thing. You do that to extremists. This is a religious group. Using tear gas against them and water cannons against a religious group isn't exactly kosher in my eyes. So I would rather negotiate and engage rather than being more violent about it. Iba naman ang extremist groups. Binabato naman kami ng Molotov cocktail doon, 'di ba? Ando doon ako mismo na nasa Mendiola. Ilang beses ako muntik tamaan ng bato, muntik ako tamaan ng Molotov cocktail. Dinisrush mo talaga 'yon. Pero in this case, where it is a peaceful and it's a simple protest in my eyes, there's no need to use extreme measures to disperse. We actually did at 11 p.m. the night before. But how do you prevent people from traveling from one point to another, then assembling on it's like Occupy Wall Street, and that's what they did. So they did Occupy People Power Park, and there's also you cannot use violence all the time. There were more policemen than there were protesters. We had more than 15,000 at its peak, and there were only 12,000 protesters last night. So there were more policemen than protesters. But of course, it's always maximum tolerance. The policy of this administration is maximum tolerance towards these things.
Is that what the president wanted? Was that his instructions? Handle with maximum tolerance?
Yes, always treat people with respect. Always exercise maximum tolerance. And negotiate if you can to get the better results out of things.
Don't go away because Money Talks with Kathy Yang is up next to get you ahead of the markets. I'm Pauline Verzosa. Stay tuned to One News.
Good morning mga kapatid. I'm Angela Lagunsad Castro. The House prosecution team may ask the Senate impeachment court to clarify or possibly lower the vote threshold needed to convict Vice President Sara Duterte. Prosecution advisor Robert Ace Barber says the issue may be raised at the appropriate time, calling it an important legal question ahead of the trial. Under the Constitution, conviction in an impeachment trial requires the vote of at least 2/3 of all senators or 16 out of 24. But Barber says the threshold may need to be settled if some senators cannot participate in the proceedings. Vice President Sara Duterte's impeachment trial is set to begin next week. To help us understand the legal questions surrounding this, we have Attorney Domingo Cayosa, former president of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, or IBP. Good to have you with us, Attorney. Good morning.
Good morning, Angela. Magandang umaga sa ating mga kababayan.
Well, there's a lot to unpack, no, in terms of the discussion on the impeachment trial of the Vice President. But can the conviction threshold in an impeachment trial be lowered? And do you agree with what the former congressman has said earlier, that this can be tackled in an appropriate time?
Well, of course, eventually it has to be settled. But at this point, it might be premature to run to the Supreme Court for the Supreme Court to issue an opinion on the matter, because under the existing jurisprudence and the Constitution, the Supreme Court cannot take a proactive role. It has to wait for a case ripe for determination, and so far that hasn't been achieved. Pre-trial pa lang ngayon, they haven't voted, so it might be premature. Most probably also, if you bring it to the Supreme Court now, the Supreme Court will avoid it and wait for things to unfold, because it is also very possible that the Senate by itself, as an impeachment court and as a collegial body, can resolve this much faster than the Supreme Court.
Right, but currently po talaga, as of now, wala po talagang case pa filed at the Supreme Court to question this issue. Ang naalala ko lang po is yung from Senator Alan Peter Cayetano questioning the quorum. And I believe quorum is different from the issue of threshold voting. Tama po?
That is true. There is already jurisprudence on the question of quorum, which is anchored in a very rational, logical, and practical grounds. At ang interpretation ng Supreme Court dyan, dun sa Avelino versus Cuenco and old case, sabi ng Supreme Court, quorum is determined based on those who are actually and effectively available among the senators. So malinaw yun. Now, it is also possible, now of course, if you look at the Constitution as it is, and is a strict interpretation and reading of the Constitution, nakalagay 2/3 of all members. But there's also basis for those who argue, if you look at the intent and spirit of the Constitution, ang intention kasi dyan ng constitutional framers is, it has to be a qualified majority, not a simple majority. So that's the essence of all of these things. Kaya lamang, ginawa nilang masyadong simplistic of all the members. But if it comes to a point where hindi makakapag-operate ang Senate because so many of its members are indisposed, cannot effectively participate, then there can also be logic. They can also adopt the same logic in the Avelino versus Cuenco, na let's be practical and look at the intent. As long as there is a 2/3 majority, then there can be a conviction, because there's also a rule in statutory construction in interpreting the Constitution and the laws that the courts, including the Supreme Court, should look at harmonize and look at possible ways by which the law becomes effective, hindi yung mawawalan ng saysay. So that can be an argument for those who say you can lower the threshold or the basis for the 2/3 vote in case there are not enough senators who can effectively participate in the impeachment.
Well, Attorney, since yun nga po, wala naman po nagko-question pa sa Supreme Court, can the impeachment court settle this issue before the trial begins? Kumbaga, sila na lang po, is it also prudent for them to settle this para po pagdating sa trial, dire-diretso na sila?
Well, that's possible, but it is not necessary. Because if they settle it now, it will preempt many things. Malay natin,
Which
yung
is,
nakakulong o yung nagtatago biglang makalabas at makapag-participate. So wala tayong problema. O kaya, malay mo, yung boto pala is a lot more than the two-thirds. Halos lahat boboto. So they will still get the two-thirds vote. So that will be kind of premature. So baka i-avoid din nila yan. Kasi nga, yung impeachment procedure, it is quasi-judicial, quasi-political. So the politics of it depende sa public sentiment and yung political wins, maaring magbago. Yung mga pro-impeachment ngayon, magiging anti o kaya yung anti-impeachment, makukumbinsi sila sa ebidensya. So mas maganda siguro, ituloy na lang muna nila, maayos na paglilitis.
Right.
Saka nila pagbotohan yan, kung ilan ba talaga ang kinakailangan. And then if anybody questions it, they can run to the Supreme Court.
Yun na nga eh. So what if, yun nga po, in the course of the trial, somebody goes to Supreme Court, ang tanong po dito, of course, ng public, madedelay din ba yung impeachment?
Well, I don't think we should not delay the impeachment. That's the more important thing. Because they can proceed with the trial. They can hear both sides. Diba? Para ang importante dito, makita at malaman ng buong mamamayan what is really the score, what's the evidence. And then, because the decision of the impeachment courts, the senators, the senator judges, will also depend on how the public will perceive things. That's why nga, quasi-political. So it should not, regardless of what the vote will be, ang importante yung katotohanan, di ba? And it goes to a process. That should not be delayed by any other reason or any other factor. Let them cross the bridge when they get there.
Get there. Okay. But as a lawyer, attorney, how does the impending arrest of Senator Rodante Marcoleta, the detention of Senator Estrada, and the disappearance of Bato would actually affect the vote, the voting count in the impeachment trial? Because meron po silang sinasabi na justiciable reach, na baka maaring mapagbigyan itong dalawa na makukulong, pero yung isa na we don't know where he is, ay hindi pwede. Your thoughts on that?
Well, of course you can argue that way because they have different circumstances. But the principle remains the same, rule of law. Yung isa, may valid warrant of arrest issued by an international court na kinikilala ng ating local laws and our international commitments. So, magpakabayani ba siya? Susubot ba siya? And then, he has a pending case before the Supreme Court. Decision ng Supreme Court yun, one way or the other. Diba? Hindi pwedeng, dinidribble-dribble kasi ng Supreme Court kung minsan yan, masyadong matagal. Yun namang mga nakatulong, pag plunder ho kasi or anti-graft cases, malinaw sa batas, you can be preventively suspended, but that will only be for 90 days, so limited time. But if you are in jail because you cannot avail of the right to bail because it is life imprisonment, penalty, you are treated like any other criminal. Wala naman yung detention na binibigyan ng tablet o cellphone para mag-conduct ng kanyang business. So, mahirap din kahit gustuhin man yan ng Sandigan Bayan, mahirap din na ibahin yung treatment ng senador dun sa ordinary criminal because parehong criminal case ito di ba? Wala namang your right to have communication with the outside world and conduct your normal business when you are a detention prisoner for a serious offense. Tinatanggal yan dun sa mga ordinary criminals or suspects or accused. Bakit iba ang senador? So that is a basic rule. That is a more basic rule than the preventive suspension. So medyo mahihirapan. I don't know, maaari siguro pagbigyan ng Sandigan Bayan. It is upon the Sandigan Bayan kasi yung jurisdiction nasa kanila na
Pero one could argue and say, wait, hindi pa naman sila convicted
Well, the same thing with everybody else who's charged with a capital offense. Hindi pa rin sila convicted, preventive detention sila without automatic bail, but they don't even have a cell phone. So what's the difference between a sitting senator and an ordinary congressman or a mayor or even a janitor? Di ba dapat pare-pareho lang? Criminal. Hindi ho naman yan yung usaping politiko.
Tama. Okay. So, attorney, onto the impeachment trial itself, should the private prosecution be allowed to examine the witnesses as well? Because naging isa po yan dun sa manifestation, pero until now, there's no decision on it eh.
Well, it is for the impeachment court to decide. It's a matter of procedure, but fundamentally or theoretically, kung tinatanggap mo yan na private prosecutor, so dapat pwede siyang to act like a private prosecutor. Hindi naman pwedeng private prosecutor class A, private prosecutor class B, diba? So maaaring gano'n. But of course, para naman hindi napakarami yung mga magtatanong, pwede namang ilimit. But I think it should not be limiting the person. It should be time limits. Mas maganda yon, regardless of kung sino magtatanong, private prosecutor man o public prosecutor, one of the congressman prosecutors. Ang importante yung time limit. Kasi ang ina-avoid natin dito, yung tendency ng mga tao to grandstand during the impeachment process. O kaya yung iba naman, depensa, dribble dito para aabutin ng siyam-siyam. The spirit and intent of the Constitution is pag-impeachment, because it's a very important accountability mechanism, and the involvement is high government officials, and these are serious offenses, dapat mabilisan yan so that may restore ang stability, at kung may kasalanan, managot siya kaagad so that the Republic will not suffer from the same kind of leadership. So yun ang spirit. So dapat from both the side of the prosecution and the defense, dapat yung impeachment court, pinipigilan niya yung grandstanding at pagdidribble-dribble.
Right. Okay, so there are 4 articles of impeachment to be discussed during the trial. At sinasabi po ni Representative Chua na maaari daw po, even just in the first article of impeachment, makasecure sila ng votes for conviction, pwede nang okay na hindi na matakal yung iba. So paano po ba yung ganung proseso, attorney?
Well, they should review the existing Senate rules on impeachment from published accounts or reports, no? Ang binago lang nila diyan yung pagpapalit or the flexibility of designating presiding officer. Pero if my recollection serves me right, yung existing and old Senate rules and impeachment na nagamit na sa ibang impeachment, dapat ang procedure diyan is they go from one article to the next, and then pagbobotohan nila isa-isa yan. Hindi naman yung after presentation in one, boboto na sila. Unless, of course, the Senado again will change that, because that's part of their power. They can change it. But of course, yan, ilalantad kasi it has to be published. Both sides have to know. So, mas maganda nga sana kung meron ng sigurado at may boto na, ba't pa natin aksayahin ang panahon natin dun sa iba? But of course, may halong politiko kasi din yung impeachment trial.
Yeah, that's true.
So yung iba siguro, kahit sigurado na dito, kumbinsido na, gusto pa nilang idiin para sabihin nila na lahat ng ginawa namin ng trabaho namin, lahat ng charges, kaya naming patunayan.
Okay, so the defense po has, repeatedly urged the impeachment court to dismiss the case itself. Pero I was wondering, because as far as I know, ang impeachment court naman po, ang kanilang responsibility or kanilang sole responsibility is to try the case forthwith. So do they have that kind of power to dismiss the case?
But I don't think so. If we base it on the wording and intent of the Constitution, the wording then is trial shall proceed forthwith.
Forthwith, yeah.
Ibig sabihin trial. Ibig sabihin, ang trial, didinggi mo magkabilang panig. Hindi yung motion to dismiss kaagad. Why is that important? Because it's not just a question of evidence and technicalities in the rule. What is more important is the whole public, the whole country will see ano ba yung ebidensya? Ano ba yung depensa mo? Anong mga argumento mo? That's very important when we talk about public accountability. So, it has to be a trial. Hindi yung pwedeng, dahil may boto na kayo, gaya nung ginawa nung naunang impeachment, binasura na nila, drinibon na nila, binalik sa House of Representatives. That will be a sabotage of the Constitution. That will frustrate the spirit and letter and intent of the Constitution.
Right.
So, hindi ho pwede yan sa ating paningin. Of course, they will try it again, but it is for the body politic, tayo mga mamamayan, di ba gusto natin malaman, totoo ba ito o hindi? Ano bang katotohanan? That's more important to my mind than even a guilty verdict or all the technicalities that the smart lawyers from both sides can think of.
Now, Attorney, I also would like to ask you regarding Senator Marcoleta's looming case, itong plunder case sa kanya. And he also repeatedly said na itong campaign donation na ito is not public funds. So, therefore, he cannot be charged plunder. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I suggest they read again the anti-plunder law. Kasi maliwanag ho kasi sa definition ng ano ba yung ill-gotten wealth. Kasi plunder law is kung yung ill-gotten wealth mo umabot ng 50 million or above and there's a series of transactions, then that could be considered plunder. Ito, inamin niya kasi na may tinanggap akong donation, tigde 25 million, 3 different instances, 75 million. Hindi niya yan dineclare sa SALN niya. Hindi niya yan dineclare dun sa statement of contributions and expenses required by COMELEC law of any candidate. So, kumbaga, hindi niya pinaalam, tinago niya yan. E nung nagkabukuan, nung kinasuhan siya sa COMELEC, sabi niya, hindi, natanggap ko yan, pero hindi pa kasi noon election eh. Hindi pa campaign period. Therefore, hindi ko na kinakailangan i-declare. Pero hindi rin naman niya dineclare sa SALN. So, all of these circumstances, galing sa kanya kasi eh. So, ngayon, ang kanyang appeal to the public is, hindi naman yan galing sa kaban ng bayan. Of course, if you're the public, you're not a lawyer and you haven't read the law, baka maniniwala ka. Pero yung pandarambong, yung corruption, kagaya ho nung kaso ni Erap Estrada noon, hindi naman siya nagnakaw daw sa kaban ng bayan. Komisyon ng huweteng yun. Private money.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, that's a good point.
He was held accountable. He was convicted for those things. Ganon din si Senator Marcoleta. Kasi nga, kung noong panahon na tinanggap niya yung tig to 25 million, congressman siya eh. Public official siya. Pag ikaw public official, bawal yung tumanggap ng mga regalo. An account of your office. Of course, it is presumed it's an account of your office kasi nakaupo kang congressman eh. Wala siyang, sabi niya, regalo lang daw. Hindi ka tanggap-tanggap yun. That is indirect bribery. So yun ang kanyang problema. Yung bang maganda rin, it's good that we explain this para mas maintindihan ng ating kababayan.
Ang problem pa dito kasi there's an admission on live television. But I want to ask you also, Attorney, regarding former Secretary Manuel Manny Bonoan, that he is being eyed as a state witness in connection to this flood control cases. And this move has raised legal and ethical questions. So, in your point of view, dapat ba, tama ba na siya ay state witness dito sa usapin ng flood control projects?
Well, may I correct you on that, Angela? Hindi lang flood dito. Ginawa na eh. There's already a motion to discharge him.
Yeah.
So, so an ethical point of view, huwag nating santuhin si Secretary Bonoan. Kasama siya sa nangurakot eh.
Exactly.
That's clear. So, hindi siya yung santo. Yung kumbaga, naghudas siya doon sa kasama niyang mga magnanakaw, to put it bluntly, di ba? Kasi nakasuhan ito eh. At maswerte siya na siya nakumbinsi o kaya he was willing to tell the whole truth. So, on a legal point of view, if you look at the Witness Protection Program, hindi naman siya disqualified. Kasi ang nakalagay dun sa kwan, pwede kang state witness as long as you're not one of the most guilty.
Least guilty ka.
Oo, hindi, it's not least guilty. You're not one of the most guilty. So, you can be more guilty than the others. For example, he's more guilty than the COA auditors who turned a blind eye o tumanggap ng konti, hindi na nag-report. So, but it does not mean to say you're the least guilty as long as you're not one of the most guilty. So far, mukhang hindi naman siya.
Pasok
diba?
yun.
But I think it is a very strategic win for the ombudsman or for the government, for the prosecution, to get him as a state witness. Why is that? Kasi itong mga USEC, yung mga district engineer, sasabihin nila, hindi ko alam yan. Ang hanggang alam ko lang, Bulacan. Yung nakawan all over the country.
Right.
For the secretary, he cannot say that na hindi ko alam. Dapat alam niya legally and theoretically and logically lahat ng transaction, the buck stops at the table of the DPWH secretary. So he's competent to testify not only of the corruption in Bulacan, Mindoro, Davao, everything, every district of this country. And he should have the documents and the records to corroborate his statement. So, very strategic siya. Ang importante lang dito, nabantayan natin, ibabalik ba niya yung ninakaw niya? Kailan at magkano
Yun
yan?
nga
Will he tell the whole truth or selective na naman? He cannot wiggle too much away from that too much because dapat alam niya lahat. So, hindi niya pwedeng hanggang Bulacan lang ako, hanggang Negros lang ako. He cannot do that. So, at sangkot din siya eh. Pwede rin siyang balikan, i-reinstate yung kaso laban sa kanya at ipapakulong dun siya kung hindi niya sasabihin lahat. So, makita natin yan, bantayan natin, let's be vigilant, let's see what the ombudsman will really do with him. But I think he's legally competent, he's legally not disqualified to be a witness, and I think it's a strategic achievement na pumapayag siya. Ang bantayan na lang natin, pepremyohan ba siya? Hindi ba ibabalik yung ninakaw niya? O dapat ibabalik din? At the same time, will he tell the whole truth and produce the corroborating documents and records which a secretary should have?
Well, si Senator Lacson naman po has said, dapat daw i-restitute yung at least 1 billion. So, ibig sabihin, kung may ibabalik, ibig sabihin may kinuha, may ninakaw. But Attorney, we have a lot of things to talk about, pero unfortunately, we don't have much time. But thank you so much for your insights, Attorney Domingo Cayosa. Good morning.
Maraming salamat. Good morning sa lahat.
More matters to discuss after this quick break. Keep it here on One News.
Good morning. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News.
Senator Risa Ontiveros is discussing the controversial issue of political dynasties in a forum in Manila. And for more details, let's go to our mobile journalist, Arles De Los Santos. Arles.
Yes, Pauline, naniniwala nga si Senator Risa Ontiveros na kailangan at trabahuhin at pag-usapan ng maayos ng kapulungan ng Congress at ng Senado ang isinusulong na anti-political dynasty bill sa bansa. Dahil aniya, nakabase mismo sa mga pag-aaral na mayroong direktang epekto ito sa ekonomiya ng mga nasasakupan ng political families maging sa mismong poverty incidence sa mga lugar kung saan matagal nang nananatili sa kapangyarihan ang mga miyembro ng political dynasty. No? Pero hindi lamang yan ang napag-usapan dito sa forum ngayong araw. Pinag-usapan din, Pauline, yung patungkol nga sa umunoy pagbababa o pagtataas ng criminal responsibility ng mga kabataang tinatawag na children in conflict with the law. Pauline, so far, sinabi ni Ontiveros na tutol siya na pababain ang minimum age of criminal responsibility ng mga kabataan kasunod ng nangyaring malagim na shooting incident sa Tacloban City noong June 22. Ayon ni Ontiveros, mas maigi kung suriin at timbangin muna at kung kinakailangan gawing mas komprehensibo ang mga ginagawang diversion at intervention program para sa mga kabataang lumalabag sa batas. Makatutulong din umano kung dadagdagan ng pondo ang mga bahay pag-asa sa bansa at dapat din higit sa lahat, Pulino, ay makatugon ang mga executive departments para harangin at panagutin ang mga malign actors na tinatawag sa digital space kagaya na lamang ng 764 na isang online nihilistic violent extremist o NVA group na tinatarget ang mga vulnerableng kabataan sa digital space at bine-brainwash ang mga ito at kalaunan nga nasabi mismo ni Ontiveros na may connection ito sa nangyaring shooting incident sa Tacloban City.
Arles, may mga tanong pa ba na nais tanungin ni Senator Risa Ontiveros pagdating dito sa diskusyon ng violence among children? Dahil kahapon nga nagkaroon na siya ng hearing discussing yung online platforms. Pero may iba pa bang factors na tinitignan itong si Senator Risa Ontiveros kung bakit laganap nga ang violence sa kabataan?
May mga nabanggit si Ontiveros, Polino, patungkol na lamang doon, patungkol din doon sa pagbabantay ng mga magulang, no? Kasi kasama rin sa mga usapin ngayon yung social media regulation na kung saan sinabi niya na kailangan din itong silipin, no? At hindi dapat ito maging resort basta-basta na pagbawala mag-social media yung mga kabataan. Kailangan din umano ng guidance ng mga magulang, no? Dahil ito pa rin yung magagabay sa mga kabataan pagdating sa kanilang pang-araw-araw na kinukonsumo na content online sa mga application na ginagamit. Kasi Pauline, kung titingnan natin, no, kung yung mga kabataan man na may mga sabihin nating tablet or gadgets na ginagamit, hindi sila basta-basta rin kasi makagagawa nga naman ng access sa mga sa mga gaming platforms, no, or sa mga app stores. Kasi kailangan yung mga email accounts para ma-access yung mga yon, and dun parang magbe-bridge yung gap na tinatawag na sinasabi ni Ontiveros, kasi hindi lamang ito din basta yung influence ng mga grupo na may iba't ibang mga nais mangyari or gawin o impluwensya sa mga kabataan, no, kundi yung access din mismo doon sa mga application na iyon sa pamamagitan ng guidance ng mga magulang. Kaya kailangan din daw talaga yan. Pero sa kabila niyan, pag-uusapan pa rin daw ng kanilang komite sa Senado kung ano nga yung mga maaari pang gawin. Though hindi niya pa naiisip, at least for Ontiveros, na itaas yung criminal responsibility na ngayon ay pinag-uusapan pa rin ng publiko.
Thank you very much for that report. That was mobile journalist Arles de los Santos.
The House Prosecution Panel gears up for the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte. Mobile journal Amy Atienza is now reporting live on the ground for the details. Amy, how's the preparation there?
Yes, good morning, Angela. Para naman sa panig ng House Prosecution Panel pati na rin ng private litigators ay tuloy-tuloy ang kanilang paghahanda, at ngayong araw nga ay nagkaroon sila ng misa para manawagan sa truth, accountability and justice. Naniniwala daw kasi ang panig ng Kamara na talagang sapat yung mga ebidensya, maging yung mga dokumento para nga daw i-convict si Vice President Sara Duterte sa kanyang posisyon bilang Vice Presidente. Ngayon, inaasahan din natin na ngayong araw ay magpa-file nga din ng komento itong prosecution team doon sa pre-trial order na natanggap mismo galing sa Senado. So, doon sa pre-trial order, yung proseso ng impeachment trial na inaasahang gagawin sa July 6, maging yung 62 trial dates, yung allotment ng 62 trial dates na nirequest mismo ng Kamara para nga doon sa 4 na articles of impeachment. So ina-expect din natin na sa Monday, July 6 ay magsisimula na nga yung pagpresenta o yung presentasyon mismo ng House Prosecution Team at ng private lawyers doon sa grave threats na ibinigay ni Vice President Sara Duterte laban kay Pangulong Bongbong Marcos. At yun ay may allotted 11 trial dates at magtutuloy-tuloy yan hanggang sa confidential funds, unexplained wealth at bribery ni Vice President Sara Duterte. So expect din natin na patuloy talaga yung magiging preparasyon nila even during the trial proper of the impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte.
Well, Amy, for clarification lang, there are 4 articles of impeachment. Can you cite with us isa-isa who will lead from the prosecution per article of impeachment? And meron na bang decision kung papayagan ng House Prosecution Panel to examine the witnesses as well?
Yung doon muna tayo, Angela, sa part ng pag-cross-examine nga doon sa mga witnesses. Kasi nakita natin doon sa pre-trial order, 57 yung nakalista sa House of Representatives or sa House Prosecution Panel, habang sa end naman ng defense team, nasa around over 90 yung witnesses na gusto nila, though hindi pa nakaspecify kung sino-sino nga yun. At may 17 common witnesses ang prosecution maging ang defense. So, nung kausap din natin si impeachment advisor, pati na rin legal spokesperson Robert A. Swarbers. Ang nasabi niya, yung pag-cross-examine daw nito mga private lawyers ay naging practice na rin naman noong mga nakaraang impeachment proceedings. So walang rason para i-object ng defense team nor hindi na gawin yung ganitong klase ng sistema pagdating nga ng impeachment trial sa July 6. So expected talaga na merong participation itong private prosecutors pagdating sa pagtatanong doon sa mga tetestigo doon sa apat na articles of impeachment. As for the assignments naman, syempre si Representative at House Lead Prosecutor Jervy Luistro, siya ang mangunguna talaga doon sa apat na articles of impeachment. Andyan din na mangunguna si Representative Keith Flores, Representative Joel Chua, pati na rin si Representative wait lang, if I'm not mistaken, it's Representative Terry Ridon. Yes, para nga dun sa articles of impeachment na ipepresenta mismo ng Kamara. Ang nakikita din dito ay may pinakamahaba talagang pag-uusapan ay yung doon sa confidential funds ni Vice President Sara Duterte na meron ngang allotted din na 31 trial dates.
Alright, thank you so much, Mobile Journal, Amy Atienza.
Amid rising production costs, the government is giving farmers and fisher folks a break through real property tax exemptions for qualified farm storage facilities. Mobile journalist Daniel Dayao has the report.
The DA and DALG have signed a joint memorandum circular setting the guidelines for real property tax exemption for farm input and output storages.
In the middle of rising costs, every peso counts for farmers and fisher folks. And to help ease expenses, the Department of Agriculture partnered with the Department of Interior and local government to implement real property tax exemption for qualified farm warehouse facilities.
Every peso counts, no? At makakatulong talaga ito na mabawasan ang operating cost or cost of production. Of course, mas dapat mas malaki yung kikitain ng ating mga magsasaka at mga isda.
Under the Sagip-Saka Act, the Joint Memorandum Circular aims to provide a uniform framework and establish a clear guideline for Filipino farmers, fishers, and cooperatives. The primary aim is to encourage more investment in storage facilities, reduce post-harvest losses, secure better produce prices, and protect the country's food supply.
Ang advantage din is once there are more warehouses per, let's say, per farm, mas makakuha ng better price yung ating mga farmer dahil may ability na siya to store yung kanilang produkto. And ang namomonitor man ng LGU siguro yung sales nito, which should result in bigger sales, no? And it should reflect on the taxes also. May tax recovery din dyan sa mga negosyo, more income for the whole barangay.
The DA also says any tax savings can be redirected toward better farm inputs, enterprise expansion, and overall productive agriculture. As per the circular, qualified storage facilities with an assessed value of up to 3 million pesos may qualify for the exemption. The implementation will begin immediately, with the DALG leading the guideline rollout to LGUs nationwide.
Ngayon sa ating joint memorandum circular ay inaataas ako ang ating Undersecretary Iringan na ikalat agad sa ating mga local government units, lahat ng munisipyo, lahat ng barangay na tungkol dito sa joint memorandum circular.
The part there will already be tapos na yung dissemination sa ating mga local government. And then they have to revisit the tax code and then enact the proper ordinances.
Kapatid Mobile Journal, Daniel Dayao, we are One News.
Stay tuned, Morning Matters returns after a quick break. Good morning, I'm Cheska Litoncalo. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. As we know, the Department of Labor and Employment announced an 85 peso daily wage increase for workers in Metro Manila, the biggest wage hike approved by the National Capital Region Wage Board. Labor Secretary Francis Tolentino said around 1.1 million minimum wage earners are expected to benefit from the adjustment, increasing the daily minimum wage from 695 pesos to 780 pesos. The wage increase will be implemented in 2 phases, an initial 60 peso increase effective July 19, 2026, followed by an additional 25 pesos increase in January 2027. Meanwhile, several labor groups said the increase remains inadequate amid the rising cost of basic goods.
The wage increase is expected to benefit millions of workers, but questions remain on whether it will be enough amid rising costs. And joining us to discuss this is Kamanggagawa Party List Representative Eli San Fernando. Congressman, welcome back to Morning Matters.
Hello po, magandang umaga po. Salamat sa pag-imbita uli sa amin sa inyong programa.
All right. Well, first of all, Congressman, the government is calling this a historic wage increase because this is the biggest single daily increase ever approved by the NCR Wage Board. But Congressman, for you, would you consider this a major win for Filipino workers?
Siyempre yan yung inabot na patuloy na pag-iingay at paglaban ng mga manggagawa for higher wages. Pero let's call spade a spade. Barya yan, tapos ang ginawa pa ay ginawang 2 gives hulugan o installment. I would suggest to Secretary Tolentino to refrain from packaging it as historic high. Alam niyo po kung bakit? Kasi yung 85 pesos, hindi namang isang bagsakan na ibibigay eh. So this July, 60 pesos and the remaining 25 pesos would be implemented or given on January 2027. So kaya ang talagang increase lang sa mga manggagawa dito sa National Capital Region ay 60 pesos for this year. Now, why are we calling it barya? Because no other than the Philippine Statistics Authority has already mentioned na nabawasan ang purchasing power ng mga manggagawa o ng mga Pilipino ng 30% since 2018. So what would that mean for a minimum wage earner? Ang kahulugan niyan is around 100 to 200 pesos na yung nawala doon sa real value ng sahod ng mga manggagawa. So if that's the case, PSA na ang nagsasabi, bakit ka magbibigay ng 85 pesos? Second, ang problema dito, kung pinapackage na siya as highest, papaano naman yung ilalabas na wage order sa mga probinsya? Kung 85 pesos sa NCR, ibig sabihin, we will expect way lower than 85 pesos sa mga probinsya kapag naglabas na yung ng wage order, yung mga regional wage boards. So yan yung sinasabi natin na if we may suggest to Secretary Tolentino, while it is true na in terms of nominal value, highest yan dito sa NCR, it does not reflect the whole picture kung paano ba i-implement yan. At hindi yan nakatuntong doon sa kailangan talaga ng mga manggagawa.
Congressman, aside from the minimum wage earners, sino-sino pa or alin pa ang mga directly affected by the wage increase? And how?
Siyempre itong wage order na nilabas ng National Capital Region pertains only to the minimum wage earners. Pero siyempre may effect yan, no? So when you increase wages ng mga minimum wage earner, ang mangyayari diyan ay magkakaroon ng wage distortion doon sa mga above minimum. Ibig sabihin kailangan mag-adjust kasi ang example niyan, if I am a worker in a company for 5 years or 6 or more than 5 years, tapos nagtaas ngayon ng minimum wage. So halos papantay na yung sahod namin ng entry level tsaka ako na matagal na nagtatrabaho sa kumpanya. So mawawalan ako ng incentive to work kasi halos pantay ko na yung entry level na minimum wage earner. So mangyayari diyan magkakaroon ng wage distortion. So yan yung effect nitong paglalabas ng wage order na ito. Ang exemption dito sa pagtataas ng sahod, number 1 ay yung mga micro enterprises. So by virtue of the Barangay Micro Business Enterprise Law, exempted na ang micro enterprises. Hindi rin kasama dito yung mga domestic workers natin. So yun po ang pasok dito sa wage order na nilabas sa NCR.
Per Congressman kayo po, how will you closely monitor the implementation of this wage hike? Are you expecting or anticipating any compliance issues?
Yan yung trabaho ng Department of Labor and Employment. It is up to the DOLE to monitor the implementation or the enforcement of this wage order. Malaking problema yan. Pero sinabi ni Secretary Tolentino dito sa National Capital Region, 95% ang compliance rate. Pero talamak na problema ng mga manggagawa, yung mga employer na hindi sumusunod doon sa wage order. Merong karampatang parusa yan, no? So, pwedeng mapagmulta yung mga employer na hindi nagbabayad ng sahod sa kanilang mga manggagawa. At isa pang pupwede dyan, yung tinatawag natin na double indemnity. Sabihin, kung hindi binayaran yung mga manggagawa according to the wage order, ang kapalit niyan ay doble na dapat ibayad doon sa mga manggagawa sa bawat araw na hindi siya nakatanggap ng kanyang sahod. So who has the power, who has the resources and capacity to do this? The Department of Labor and Employment. Hence, we are asking the DOLE to strengthen its inspectorial powers. Dapat talagang ma-inspect yung mga business establishments if they are really implementing this new wage order.
But aside from that, Congressman, with the past wage hikes, may nakita ba tayong negative effects like downsizing or hiring freezes?
Maraming literature at maraming datos at pag-aaral na nagsasabi na hindi mangangahulugan ng mass retrenchment or unemployment yung pagtataas ng sahod ng mga manggagawa. We have a study from UP School of Labor and Industrial Relations saying that there is an insignificant impact or there is no correlation or causation kapag tinaas mo ang sahod, mangangahulugan ng retrenchment sa mga manggagawa. So hindi rin naman natin nakikita na itong 85 pesos ay mangangahulugan ng malawakang tanggalan ng trabaho. Kasi nga, kung ang concern ay mga micro-enterprises, hindi exempt na yung mga micro-enterprises. Mas ang pinatutungkulan nito ay yung mga mas malalaking mga business establishment, which we believe and which we assert, they have the capacity to pay their workers more. Kasi nga, na year in, year out, yan yung nire-report by the billions of pesos yung net profit na kinikita ng mga malalaking kumpanya. So bakit naman sasabihin nila na hindi nila kakayanin na magpasahod ng mas mataas sa kanilang mga manggagawa if the same data say na bilyon-bilyon yung kinikita nila year in, year out. So yung sinasabi ng Employers Confederation of the Philippines at ng mga malalaking negosyante, tigilan na po natin yung pananakot sa mga manggagawa. So hindi dapat sisihin ang mga manggagawa doon sa ibang mga factors of production na nagpapataas doon sa overall production cost at sa operating expenses. It is the responsibility of the government to control and to find ways and solutions para itong mga factors of production ay mapababa natin yung presyo, especially electricity and fuel commodities.
So Congressman, wala po ba kayong nakikitang common ground here between employers and workers? Because on the part of, let's say, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, they're calling for a balanced approach. Kasi nga naman, itong mga negosyo, lalo na yung mga maliliit na businesses, yung mga micro-enterprises, yung ability nila to absorb these higher labor costs will also weigh down on them. So, is there a balance po ba that, can we strike a balance here, find a common ground?
Una, we are one with the micro and small enterprises in their fight for more government support or incentives. Sinusulong nga natin sa Kongreso, una, ma-exempt na doon sa mga sangkatutak na red tape at fees yung mga micro and small enterprises kasi yan yung kumakain doon sa operating expenses, sa gastusin ng mga negosyo. Pangalawa, gusto nga natin mapalawig pa yung validity ng mga permits na ini-issue ng mga LGUs para sa mga micro and small enterprises. So hindi to tungkol sa nagbabanggaan na interes ng maliit at mga maliitang negosyo at ng mga manggagawa. So ang balance dito is dapat yung gobyerno mag-step in. Pumasok ang gobyerno. Wala kasing sapat na suporta. Naiintindihan namin yung mga micro and small enterprises. Kasi parehas ang manggagawa at micro small enterprises na walang nakukuhang suporta o insentibo mula sa gobyerno. Walang kahit anong makabuluhang batas Halimbawa, ang major na factor na nagtutulak ng mataas na operating expenses ay electricity and fuel commodities. Ngayon, ang panukala namin, parehas ng manggagawa at ng mga negosyante, tanggalin yung value-added tax, o bawasan yung value-added tax or EVAT doon sa fuel commodities and electricity. Ayaw ng gobyerno. para mapababa yung operating expenses tsaka production cost. Tapos ayaw din itaas yung sahod. So saan po posisyon? So ang middle ground dyan is the government to come in. Kasi kung mapapababa natin yung production cost, especially sa electricity and fuel commodities, malaking kaginhawaan yan sa mga micro and small enterprises at kayang-kaya nilang magpatupad ng wage increase. But the problem is the government is not doing its job, and even the economic managers are firmly opposed to the reduction of or at least suspension of value-added tax on these commodities. So kaya hindi magkabangga yung interest ng manggagawa at ng mga negosyante. Pero doon sa statement ng Employers Confederation of the Philippines na nakikita nila na masyadong malaki to, alam nyo ho, nalulungkot ako kasi baka ang iniisip nitong mga malalaking negosyante, baka hindi na sila makabili ng bagong sasakyan o yate o bagong bahay. Kasi yan na naman yung ginagamit nila na rason yung mga malalaking negosyante kasi year in year out, binabanggit ko nga, by the billions ang net profit na nire-report ng top corporations. Even the top 1,000 corporations in the Philippines since 2022 has a recorded almost 20% increase in their net profit. Lastly, if I may just point this out, even if you increase wages by 100 pesos, ang percent share lang nakukuhain yan doon sa profit ng mga micro small enterprises is around 6%. Sa mga large enterprises naman nasa 6%. So ibig sabihin may capacity na magbigay ng mas mataas na sahod, lalong-lalo na yung mga malalaking negosyante. So there are no excuses to implement this wage increase.
Kung there are measures for MSMEs, pero there are consumers who are worried na sa kanila ipapasa ang costs nito. So how would you address this?
Yan yung binabanggit natin Siyempre, hindi natin may iwasan yung ilang mga negosyante talagang magpapass on ng kanilang cost doon sa mga consumer. Pero kasi pag tinignan nga natin kabuuan, yung ano ba yung factors of production, yung labor cost napakaliit lang na bahagdan. So, pwedeng may magawa again ang gobyerno dito. Hindi naman po pwedeng sabihin, kumbaga mag-hands off ang gobyerno dito. The government can do something about this. Dalawa nga yung panawagan, di ba? Sahod itaas, presyo ibaba. So how concretely, paano mapapababa yung presyo ng mga bilihin? Di tanggalin mo o suspendihin mo yung value-added tax at least on electricity and fuel commodities. Malaking bagay yan. So kaya wag ipapasa ng malalaking negosyante. Para kasi ang sinisisi dito, yung mga manggagawa ang magiging may kasalanan kapag tumaas ang presyo ng mga bilihin dahil sa taas sahod. Hindi. Even without wage increase, the prices have been continuously increasing because of fuel commodities and electricity costs. So kaya ang gobyerno wag magmalinis. Kasi nasabi nila dapat balansehin, di ba? Balansehin natin ang interest ng negosyante at ng mga manggagawa. Ito na nga, may concrete na proposal na ang mga manggagawa at negosyante. The only thing left for the government to do is to act on it. Sadly, wala, ayaw ng economic managers.
With that said, Congressman, kasi itong latest 85 peso daily wage increase, malayo-layo pa yan sa hinihingi ng maraming labor groups na 200 peso legislated wage hike across the board. Are you still optimistic na maaabot natin yan? Ano na po ba ang latest efforts when it comes to this proposed law?
All the more na nabigyan ng push yung House of Representatives and Congress na mag-enact ng legislated wage increase. Kasi pinapakita nito yung pagiging unresponsive ng mga wage board sa pangangailangan ng mga manggagawa. So in the House of Representatives, on the same day na nilabas tong wage order sa NCR, ay merong committee hearing on labor and employment patungkol sa legislated wage increase. So pumasa na to during the 19th Congress, itinutulak uli ngayong 20th Congress. So tuloy-tuloy ang pag-uusap dyan. And we are hoping na merong favorable action ang 20th Congress dito sa legislated wage increase. Second, kaya kami na-push lalo, na itulak itong legislated wage increase kasi nga, bakit NCR lang yung naglabas ng ganitong wage order? Yung mga manggagawa sa buong Pilipinas apektado naman ng inflation o ng pagtaas ng presyo ng mga bilihin at serbisyo. So dapat meron din sa mga ibang rehiyon lalo na sa mga probinsya. Second, yung House Bill number 8081 which aims to repeal RA 6727, matanggal yung mga provincial wage rates na tinatawag natin at mawala itong mga regional wage boards, ay pending pa rin before the House Committee on Rules para sa second reading. So kaya we implore House Majority Leader Sandro Marcos, there is no reason or there's no excuse na hindi isalang ito sa plenaryo. There are already 200 congressmen who are supportive of this bill. So bakit po hindi pa rin na isasalang sa plenaryo itong mga bill na ito? And let me remind everyone, 4 years in the administration of President Bongbong Marcos, not even one, walang kahit isang makabuluhan na batas ang naitulak pa ng administration tungkol sa mga manggagawa, particularly sa sahod. Magsosona na si Pangulong Bongbong Marcos. Wala pa siyang pwedeng mai-report. Wala pa siyang pwedeng maipagmalaki tungkol sa mga manggagawa. So this is a challenge to the President, a challenge to the administration, na gumawa ng aksyon, ng favorable action para sa mga manggagawa. Otherwise, alalahanin namin siya na isang presidente na inutil at hindi tumugon sa pangangailangan ng mga manggagawa.
And siguro in closing, Congressman, beyond wage increases, ano pa ba dapat ang i-prioritize ng ating government to improve the quality of life of workers and to ensure yung kanilang welfare?
Tama po yan. Nung inimbita tayo ni Secretary Tolentino sa Department of Labor and Employment, other than pushing itong wage increase, itinutulak din natin na kailangan matiyak na napapatupad yung basic labor standards ng mga manggagawa. So kailangan mag-step up ng Department of Labor and Employment sa pagtitiyak na nai-inspect nito yung mga business establishments. Kasi it's a box of worms. Pag yung hindi pagbabayad ng government mandated benefits, SS, Pag-ibig, PhilHealth, yung hindi pagtupad doon sa mga wage order, nangyayari yan at the enterprise level eh. Yung paglabag doon sa mga batas tungkol sa labor-only contracting, nangyayari yan at the enterprise level. Yung violation sa labor code, saka mga basic labor standards natin, nangyayari yan at the enterprise level. So who has the capacity to ensure that the workers' rights and welfare are protected? It is the Department of Labor and Employment. So ito yung panawagan at sinadjust natin sa DOLE. If you cannot talk about wages or wala kang tindig about wages, at least do your job about pag-ensure that basic labor standards are upheld at talagang pinapangalagaan sa mga business establishments. So yun yung pwedeng agad na gawin ng gobyerno.
All right, well, we're going to leave that there for now. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us this morning. That was Kamanggagawa Party List Representative Eli San Fernando. Thank you, Congressman. Now, don't go away because Morning Matters will be back after this short break. Stay tuned.
Good morning, mga kapatid. You are still watching Morning Matters.
All right, now that's it for today's news. But before we go, we're going to talk about our takeaways. We had a packed show. Let's start with Angela's interview.
Well, of course, I talked to Attorney Domingo Cayosa, former IBP president, and he shed light on the issues on impeachment, the case, the looming case against Senator Rodante Marcoleta, and of course, the voting threshold. Diba? Yan yung mga pinag-uusapan lagi. So, it remains to be seen kung ano yung mga mangyayari talaga sa impeachment on July 6. But for now, our eyes are glued to Liwasang Bonifacio because there's an ongoing rally pa rin of third day na ng members of the Iglesia ni Cristo in support of Senator Rodante Marcoleta.
And then Pauwi and I just wrapped up an interview with Kamanggagawa Party List Representative Eli San Fernando, and of course we talked about the wage hike.
Yes.
Kasi again, while it does provide a little bit of relief, it's still far from the, how much was 200
peso daily wage proposal. And even the living wage expected of Filipinos, an ideal amount is 1,200. So if the minimum wage is still at 780,
kulang talaga. Kulang na kulang. All right, that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. I'm Angela Lagunsat Castro.
We hope we have given you just the right start to your morning. I'm Cheska Liton-Calao.
Let's make the day matter. I'm Pauline Verzosa, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
Kapatid, we are one news.
All sides,
all the time.